I have my diagnosis here. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but one of the things that it says is that the action cluster indicates a tendency to interrupt others during conversations, making careless mistake, and being disruptive to others at times without noticing. So if that happens, then hopefully I can take it back.
Actually, that's kind of that's really helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I just pulled it up, in case we wanted to talk about it. But so I got my diagnosis in March, and at age 24, I had, always experienced certain challenges socially and, growing up in school and everything.
Got it. So interrupting is I'm glad you brought that to my attention, because now I won't take it personally, and it's good to have that communication back and forth so that I don't get upset, and then I might behave differently, and then you might be like, why is she behaving like that? So I'm glad we have transparency. Thank you very much. I will not be offended about interrupting. And well, I know you did some amazing social challenge of your own. You had this great idea. Let's talk about that in a little bit. Let's first start talking about your work experience, because work experience and having autism, there can certainly be a lot of challenges. So I know you had a great internship, you loved it, and then you had another work experience, not so great. Can you share what those challenges were?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I guess, first of all, just like a little bit of background on my experience is that I did not know that I was on the spectrum throughout any of this. I only found out recently this year. Obviously I have experienced challenges in certain work environments, but I've also in many ways overcame a lot of challenges before ever even getting my first internship, which we can definitely talk more about. But when it comes to, experiences in the workplace that have been really valuable to me, my first internship I had at school, my first real technology internship was actually at Tesla. And I was very, very fortunate to get the role. It was honestly just a moonshot, even thinking about working there. And then the fact that that actually happened, I was just over the moon to be in such a mission-driven place. I always loved, cars and transportation, and being in that environment for me felt like a dream come true. I loved that environment because it allowed me to go and find a problem that I thought was, worth solving. And they supported me through the process of meeting with the different people. Everybody was very supportive of sort of my, mission that I'd taken on to go and solve that problem. And socially, the challenges were easy for me to overcome because the work was very cut and dry. There was a real problem. You could quantify it. Everybody was on board with that. And it was very supportive in that sense.
Gotcha. And so then jump to your different experience as your work experience after college.
Yeah. So as you might know, Tesla in many ways is it's an exceptional workplace. It's definitely not for everybody. I also had experiences, working with, a big consulting firm and a major bank as well. And in these more sort of, I'll call them traditional environments, I was kind of almost blindsided in some ways by the way that the problems were approached. Working in a major bank and in a consulting firm, in a lot of ways, it's not at all focused on here's a problem, here's how you solve it. If you have the best idea in the world, the biggest challenge is not actually going to be solving the problem. For me, in those environments, the biggest challenge was understanding who's responsible for what can I say, what can I not say, who can I talk to, who can I not talk to. And in a lot of ways, I found myself crossing lines that I didn't even know were there, and more or less getting punished for it. And those were, to me, things I was very foreign to. Working at Tesla as an intern, we never had those challenges. But I realized pretty quickly how a lot of the politics and the social environment in the workplace are foreign languages to me.
And you didn't have an autism diagnosis at that time?
I did not have an autism diagnosis at that time. You know, I always get really passionate about things. And there was a couple of times where, you know, I'd see, a problem I'd like to solve. I'd, talk to a bunch of people about it. Everyone's kind of on board. Some people were a little bit jaded. For example, I worked in a digital accessibility team. And, of course, the problem we're trying to solve is to make technology more accessible for individuals with disabilities. And in a lot of ways, I was, very, pumped up and gung-ho to find solutions. And in many cases, some cases I'd even write those out and email them directly to the senior leadership. Say, here's a couple of problems, and here's how I think we could go and approach them. And I got a lot of pushback and almost punishment for that approach.
Right. Jumping the higher.
Yeah. Now I know, if you're ever in the corporate world, you need to stay in your lane. You need to keep your head down. They say to think big, but you can't think too big without really taking your time to understand whose territory is, whose territory are you walking into? What are their objectives? You're not going to be directly serving them and what they're already working on. Then you might be considered a threat. Things seemed a lot more competitive when there's no rallying cry or central mission.
Right.
Like Tesla was very clear, even the senior director was willing to work with an intern who had a good idea there. So very different environments.
So this more restrictive environment, how did that impact you as a person, let's say, even outside of work?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, let me just be very honest that for me, so much of my life has been, and I don't know if this is a good thing, but so much of my life has been me really putting my passion into whatever I'm doing. I'm 100% type of person. I will get almost, some people will say that I sort of get obsessed with certain things. For example, when I started cycling in high school, most people would cycle maybe on the weekends, do some casual rides. I did that and eventually got more and more into it to the point where I was cycling literally 25 to 30 hours a week, more than 300 miles, and trying to go race bikes for my living. So I just really get into things, and it takes a lot to get me to give up or change course, for better or for worse, in an environment where there are those supports and people are on board to charge toward a mission. That's the kind of environment where I have historically been able to thrive. However, when moving into sort of these more corporate environments, especially where there's a lot of politics to navigate, and almost like, I like to think of it like landmines, like you're trying to drive over a field and bombs are just blowing up randomly. And you're like, where did that come from? What? Okay, now my arm's bleeding. I mean, that's like how it feels to me. And then realizing, halfway across this field that, you're not going to make it. Like if you want to keep going, you'll be dead by the time you reach the end of the field. That's just really sad. It brought me immense anxiety and almost to the edge of depression until I was able to change that environment. And
so you changed that environment. You took some inspiration. I believe this is the period that you were diagnosed, where you sought some opinions from the medical field. And then you took that diagnosis, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely, if you had talked to me last year, I would have been almost like a different person. I was working on a passion project on the side, which kept me going. Thank God I had something with some more creative abilities. And that passion project was actually with a group of neurodivergents, and we were setting out to create a solution for neurodivergents to find meaningful work. Obviously, in many ways, I understand that I'm extremely lucky and extremely privileged to have found even, an internship opportunity so early on that helped me at least get that feeling of self-actualization, of being able to bring my full self to work. And I have come to realize thereafter just how rare and elusive that opportunity can be. And, going to therapy for the last year, getting my diagnosis, and also working on the passion project, which is Mentra, allowed me to realize that, okay, I'm first of all not alone. There's a lot of people, on the spectrum, neurodiverse in other ways with ADHD, dyslexia, that simply aren't reaching their full potential. Going through that whole process myself and working to build Mentra as a passion project, there was a point about 6 months ago where we realized that, it's kind of now or never. There is a whole community out there. And the solution that we were trying to build a neurodiversity employment network, was something that companies were looking for too, because they were starting to realize how if we as neurodivergents are placed in the right environments, we can bring so much value to the table. But of course, that has to be incorporated, and the recruiting process today does not support that.
That is awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate, your support of our mission as well.
Definitely. And when I first met you, you were so passionate about problems. But the amazing thing is you don't get stuck on the problem. You can shift and look at the solution. And then that's where your focus becomes. And so it's great to see you come up with what the solution is and then just create that. That's really an amazing characteristic of you that I know I appreciated. And my daughter was listening when we first met and she really loved that too. So I just want to say that is a really amazing characteristic, to not get focused just on the problem, right? It's great to identify it, but then to shift to what the solution is. And that's really what Mentra is about, the solution.
Exactly. And believe me, that's not always easy as well. When you're in sort of that slump where you're feeling like you're not able to bring yourself to the world, maybe the world's not seeing, the value for who you are. Maybe you feel like there's nobody who sees that value. To be able to go from that position and really start to think about how creatively you can literally hack your own trail out of there, it's really hard. And I just want to stress that for a lot of individuals that are in that situation, there are amazing services to help, and one of them for employment, hopefully Mentra would be a resource as well. So we're actually trying to help everybody with that. And even for me, taking those measures to get out of the dark place, just because I'm in sort of a better chapter right now doesn't mean it hasn't been very difficult.
Exactly. And then that's what Mentra is about. So I really appreciate the mission of Mentra, and also how inclusive you are about neurodiversity.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, 1 in every 7 humans who are neurodiverse, and that stat is actually going up every year now. Some people are saying 1 in 5. But the point is, we don't really know, because most of us neurodivergents out there actually may not have even had a formal diagnosis, may not be in the financial position to have one. So we think at Mentra it's really important to serve, everybody under the neurodiversity umbrella. It is a very diverse range of capabilities and different forms of thinking. And we recognize that diversity, and we we champion the strengths of that amazingly versatile talent pool whenever we talk to employers.
So you've talked about how it does take energy and effort to get out of those dark places. And you mentioned how you love cycling and bike riding, and you loved it in high school, and you also did it in college, I believe. And then there was a particular friend in your life who noticed your extreme passion towards cycling. And what advice did he have for you in college?
Yeah, so very good questions. Definitely an interesting time. Just for context, I ended up, when I was in high school, I never really sort of fit in or found a group. I, experienced a lot of struggle with, bullying in middle school, being bullied. And, by the time I reached college, for better or for worse, I went to school in the same city as my high school. So it was, in a lot of ways, really difficult for me to sort of break out of that hole I was in socially, and to go and meet new people was just daunting. So I kind of threw myself into cycling, partially because of that, partially because I love cycling. But I would basically go to sleep at 8:30 in the evening. I would never go out to parties. And this was freshman year of college. Everybody's out meeting people. And I'd be the one getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go and ride my bike all day with, other cycling friends who I had met. And what I didn't realize until one of my close friends in freshman year mentioned it to me, that with the path and the lifestyle I was on, I was missing out a lot socially, specifically romantically. I had never really realized myself how the path I was on may, prevent me from finding a romantic partner. But there was one night where, he was talking to me, and he was basically, very honest, but like in a kind of a needed way, told me that if I keep going on this path, like I'll be really missing out on a lot of the value of college to find, to find that connection with other people, whether as friends or as romantic partners. And that was definitely something that kind of struck with me. And, you began to feel really bad, the idea of just staying, single and growing up and staying alone. All of a sudden I began to feel that sense of loneliness, and I got pretty sad about it for a while.
He gave you that perspective, that kind of long-term perspective. If you continue doing it, fast forward 20, 30 years, this is where you'll be. And it sounded like he asked you, is this what you want?
Is what you want.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you thought about it and you were like, no.
And that's right.
It's not.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was very content just doing my routine, and I almost didn't even realize that, all this like life was just passing me by. And, I was doing, a lot of great things with the cycling community and starting to race. But I realized that, looking ahead, I needed to change some things to get to where I wanted to go. So sometimes, even though it's really painful, and of course, at the time, I was really mad at him for even bringing it up, because, it hurt to hear.
Right.
I look back and I'm very grateful for sort of that eye-opening conversation, because there were some things that I was able to do, in the months afterward that helped me quite a lot.
Right. So you created, one of the things you did, which I loved, and my daughter loved this part too, was you created your own social challenge. And what did you do?
Exactly. So I realized, first of all, let's just put it very bluntly. I was very socially awkward. I had a lot of social anxiety. I would struggle to talk to anybody other than my absolute closest friends about anything deeper than the weather. It's not because I like the weather. I don't like small talk, and I've talked to other neurodivergents about this. But for me, I use small talk as a crutch, because I think maybe I was very scared, what would happen if the conversation veered off course. So I realized I needed to go and actually practice. This is, to me, just like, cycling even. Cycling, when you start, you're not able to go very far and not able to go very fast. And there's only one way to change that. It's to go and, ride your bike a lot, consistently. For most people, the social skills come really naturally. For me, they did not. I did not have a diagnosis. I didn't know why they didn't come naturally. Believe me, that was challenging. But all I knew that I was not going to be able to forge meaningful connections with other people unless I found a way to go and try and to go and fail and learn. And I was deeply afraid of doing that, where I grew up, because there's so many people I knew. I'd already been sort of bullied before. And basically I realized that it would be very helpful for me to get into a brand new environment, brand new people. Ideally, I was thinking about the farthest place away that I could possibly go. I went there and did an exchange program, and I made it a point to find an exchange program with the fewest people from my home school as possible. I think there were 2 others I went from my college, and I actively avoided ever interacting with them, because when I went there, my goal was to introduce myself to one stranger every day, specifically with the goal of making new friends and of meeting a potential romantic partner, which at the time, I think my idea for that was very different than afterwards. But yeah, that's basically what I sought out to do.
And Australia was where you did it.
Australia was where I did it, in Sydney. And that was really helpful, because I knew that if I had, a really awkward interaction with somebody, of course, that was never my intent. I would love to just be very socially calibrated all the time. But I knew that if something were to be awkward and someone were to think of me strangely, that I could just walk away and never see them again for the rest of my life. So that felt like a really good comfort or safety net that let me know that, hey, okay, the conversation can veer off course, and you'll still be okay, and nobody's going to think of you too strangely for very long. So
right, that is a you won't see them, so it gives you more almost incentive to take those risks, because there's
exactly
not going to be any repercussion.
Exactly. And I ended up going to the Sydney Opera House and around that area most days, and just trying to strike up conversation, with other, strangers, asking them about, where they're traveling from, what their favorite food is. Sometimes if I got really nervous, I'd ask them for directions, just as like some way, but I always make it a point for me, okay, if you're going to ask for directions, then you have to also ask them something else after, just continue the conversation. So I really just every day try to at least have one, sometimes more, conversations where I just completely introduce myself to somebody brand new. And in the beginning, a lot of time, people thought I was really creepy. Some people thought I was really awkward. Not because it's somebody's coming up and asking you a question, but because somebody's coming up and asking you a question and they have no idea how to talk to a stranger. That was me. That person was me for the longest time. So it's a little bit awkward, a little bit painful, but eventually, after 100, 200 different times doing this, I begin to kind of learn how to ask questions and how to, be more calibrated and making sure I'm not ever making someone feel uncomfortable.
Right. And what you learned by putting yourself in that situation 100, 200, 500 times really made certain skills very natural. So like in the beginning, when you were saying, you know what, I have a tendency to interrupt people. And you just read, what was written in your diagnosis. It really put me at ease, and it made me feel like, oh, I understand you a bit more. And also a lot more comfortable, because you revealed something to me that you could have hidden. And so then it certainly makes me feel more comfortable, and you can build on that. That's how friendships evolve. So that you did just naturally in the beginning. Tell me about how you took that skill and how it helped you get your Tesla internship.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, just go back on that really quick. You know, being vulnerable, I realized was a really key part of, um, you know, learning that process. When I went up to somebody for the very first time, and it's hard to say this, but if I literally said, "Hey, my name's Connor, and you know, I've struggled with social anxiety, and my goal is to, you know, learn the stories of 100 strangers so I can feel better about, you know, talking to strangers," like a lot of times that was received better than, you know, some other conversation starters, just because people felt like they were there and they were able to understand where I was coming from.
Right.
So I would definitely encourage being vulnerable. I've seen that sometimes maybe I can be too vulnerable, and that's hurt me in some ways. But in terms of how the whole process has helped me, it's almost immeasurable. When I came back to my college campus, and there was one evening where I was studying for an exam, and right at the table next door, there was you know, a bunch of, it's a whole club basically talking about solar cars, and I love, you know, solar cars, and so I actually would have never even dreamed of doing this before, not at all. But because I had sort of already practiced this idea of cold approach and you know, meeting new people, I just went over to the group and I said, you know, this is like one of my passions. I'd love to kind of learn about what you're doing. And of course, I tried not to interrupt, and I tried not to be in any way impolite or imposing myself. All things that yeah, I've learned the hard way. And basically, the group kind of welcomed me in, and one of the people at the table was actually, believe it or not, a recruiter for Tesla. And at the end of the, you know, the club meeting, he was able to help everybody, including myself, who wanted to get some, you know, resume prep. So I given him my resume, and he suggested a couple of things that I go and change, and told me to come to an info session in 3 hours. So naturally, I stopped studying for the exam and started working on my resume for the next 3 hours. And when I went to the info session, geez, there must have been like 500 people there. So I thought I had no chance, and I was starting to feel really bad about the exam the next day I hadn't been preparing for. But at the end, obviously, it paid off, because when I put my resume in the stack and I told him I'd made the changes, he marked it and put it in a separate pile, which for those of you out there listening, for better or for worse, that is how the process works for the most part. If you're applying to a job and the recruiter or the hiring manager or somebody on the inside doesn't recommend you, they don't mark you, your chances are likely going to be 10 times less to get the job. So of course, that's a process that we at Mentra really help navigate to get to avoid some of the pitfalls there. But at the time, that really helped me, and obviously it worked out in my case.
Awesome. Okay, so tell me about Mentra. Tell me what the mission is.
For sure. So our mission, and I love this question. So at the end of the day, Mentra was started, and I'll just go back like a little bit. When I got back from the Tesla internship, I joined TEDx Georgia Tech because I wanted to get involved with another project that would make me feel like I was able to really make an impact in the world. And it's obviously one of the things that I really loved about Tesla was just how focused they were around a key mission, which in their case was accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy. And when I came back, I really missed that feeling of being able to work on something bigger than just yourself. And that's why I joined TEDx. And one of the speakers that we brought in and I was organizing the conference, was actually Jillica, whose brother was 27 years old on the autism spectrum, and he was unable to speak. He had been taught his ABCs over and over again for 27 years, and then he learned how to type right before he turned 28. So all of a sudden, her whole family, who had been thinking had the intelligence of maybe a 5-year-old, were just a complete mindset shift when he started typing, really complex poetry and typing in multiple languages on a letterboard. And now he's just this amazing poet. You should definitely check out some of his work. I can send it to you, Teresa. But
sure.
Hearing her talk and hearing that story was just really resonated with me. And we went on to start, a group of advocates on campus. And I didn't even know at the time, of course, I was on the spectrum. It's come full circle. But we got involved with the local Atlanta area autism community. And that's when we realized that there are so many individuals in this community with exceptional talents. And, 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, they are struggling to find employment that recognizes those talents. And some people will say they're struggling to find employment, period. But we'll go one step further than that to say that, and I'll say from experience, if you're in a job, even if it pays really well, and if it doesn't let you maximize on your own strengths, a lot of times that can lead to a deeper feeling of heartache, and that's something we never want for anyone to have, especially in such a talented and gifted community like the neurodivergent community. So our mission at Mentra is to find meaningful careers for every neurodivergent where they are able to maximize on their core strengths and be in an environment that values their contributions. And in order to do that, we are going out into the corporate landscape and into small businesses around the country and showcasing the value that the community has to bring. So in a nutshell, we want to empower 1 in 7 humans to bring their full selves forward into the working world.
And so the problem it solves is really the underemployment and the lack of joy and feeling of purpose that someone might have if they're either unemployed or underemployed due to a particular diagnosis.
Exactly. Or in some cases, even without a diagnosis.
Good point. Good point. So you don't necessarily need a diagnosis in order to use Mentra?
Correct. We serve anybody who considers themselves neurodivergent, whether they have a diagnosis or not. And of course, that neurodivergent term is an umbrella for ADHD, autism, Tourette's, and many other conditions, including dyslexia, TBI, and it's a long list. But we will absolutely work to find meaningful employment for everybody who considers themselves a part of the community.
Okay. And what problem do you have with Mentra right now that you need to solve?
Yeah, for sure. So where we are today is we just launched our service for job seekers just about a month ago. And we're super excited because in a lot of the conversations we've had, the challenge has just been around the job finding process is really daunting. You're going out there and you're applying to hundreds of jobs. You don't know which ones, are going to be the right jobs and which ones, might not work out, even if you've got them. And then the challenge from there is there's just this resume black hole where you may not even get closure, to these hundreds of jobs you apply to. And, a lot of times we worked with folks that don't even hear back from any of them. And that stinks. That is a really, lack of validation for all of those efforts can really eat up on, a person's morale. And I get that. So what we're solving for is we're able to provide a single one-time application to Mentra. It's about 20 minutes. We try to keep it fun and we try to keep it gamified. And of course, we're always learning from our users. We're still in beta. So if you go and you sign up as a job seeker and you have feedback for us, please let us know and we will build. We're constantly improving. Point being, once you sign up, we create a digital profile for you. And that one application that you make is going to put you in front of many employers. And going back to, our challenge today, we actually have a challenge of having too many employers. We have more employer demand than we have job seekers right now. So, and I'm talking a range of jobs, everything from data science down to, working as, a customer service agent or working in a local coffee shop. We serve all kinds of roles across 27 industries. And, regardless of what type of employment you're seeking, we will go out and actively find jobs for you and bring them to you on the platform. So just to reiterate, our challenge today is actually just bringing the word out, to bringing more job seekers on, because every one of you who signs up gives us more power to go to employers and demonstrate the versatility and the immense talent pool that is already out there, that a lot of employers, they have to see it to believe it, but believe me, they're seeing it now. So we're excited about that.
Awesome. So is there a particular goal that you need to hit?
Yeah, one employer in particular is a pretty big one. They actually wanted to post 3,000 jobs on our site, and they were about to move forward with us to do that. And this is going to be a range of roles, not just technology. Of course, that's a big area for us, but we make it an active point to look for a range of non-tech roles as well, including everything from design, retail, operations, even technical writing and digital notarization, just to name a few. So this employer, they have 3,000 roles and we're about to move forward with them. And then they ask us, how many people do we have on the service? Today it's around 650. And of course, every person means the world to us, because that's a person who's trusted us to go out there and help find careers. And you've trusted us, before we've even fully launched into the final form. So by gaining that traction with the community, we're able to bring on more employers. And in this case, the employer pulled the plug and said, hey, wait a second, we have 3,000 jobs. You need to have at least 3,000 users before we can even start this pilot. So, in that case, we had to, put a pause on things, but we want to go back to them as soon as we're ready. So there's a couple other stories like that.
Yeah, you're gaining great traction because you have a great system, a great product. So it's absolutely fantastic what you're doing. So I'll make sure to put links down below for people to find out more information about how they can sign up. And is there any last words that you want to say?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Teresa, for just all of the advocacy you do in this space. And I love the name of the channel, Navigating Autism, with the awe. I think it really is important as we go out there. And I know that different folks have different terminologies they prefer, and I'm always learning that too. So apologies in advance if I might have used the wrong terms. Happy to be educated on that. But the point being, I love the reframe and being able to show the strengths of being autistic, of being neurodivergent, and really bringing that out to the world, not trying to change folks, but rather trying to change the system so that the system can see our strengths and really maximize on that. So I appreciate all that you're doing. And, I'm really excited to be a part of this larger shift in the world in whatever way I can. And yeah, thank you again.
You're welcome. All right, so the links are down below. People can check out, and I certainly encourage people to apply for your services. And they don't cost anything to the person who is looking for the job, correct?
It's absolutely free. We do charge the employers. We never charge our job seekers, and we will serve you for life. If you want to sign up and then you find a job, you can change your profile status to not seeking. And then when you're looking to pivot, change careers, or find the next job, you just flip it right back on, and we'll keep your data private. You can control all of the privacy settings to choose what's going to be shown to employers and what's not.
Awesome. Well, I certainly encourage people to check out the links below. Connor and his team are amazing and they do fantastic work. They have really large companies that really want this to succeed. So we just really need to help people put their information there and showing what it is that they want. Because as you can see in life, like you've learned, that's really that first step. Figure out what it is that you want and then start taking action. So thank you very much, Connor. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, as always.
Thank you, Teresa. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day and amazing rest of your week.